when we look at contraceptives in the first order, it is incredibly frustrating to me. Over the last number of days, we've seen a march and a protest here to try to take away women's rights and to take away their right to choose. We've seen over 80 Conservative members, I believe is the number, who've been endorsed because of their belief that they should take away a woman's right to choose. And that's fine. I'm pro-choice, and there are members who aren't. But what I don't get, if you are against a woman's right to make a choice over her own body, is how you can also be against giving her contraception. Because then what choice is she left with? And let's look at that very specifically. If you're a woman today who is in need of contraception and you don't have money, what are you supposed to do? Now, maybe you can find the money for oral contraception, but it has a failure rate of 9%. An IUD has a failure rate of 0.2%, but it costs $500 up front. And for women who don't have the money to be able to put that up front, they're left with a less effective tool to be able to have control over their sexual and reproductive health. So how in the one order can you say to a woman, you're not allowed to choose, make a choice for your body, and in the other order, we're not going to help you get contraception to be able to make a choice with your body that way either. In other words, you get no choice. And then in the same order, what conversation is being had about sexual health? You think if you're against giving contraception to women, and you're against them having a choice over their body, you'd think, well, at least you talk about sexual health. You come out and say, hey, as a woman, it's extremely important to know that your body is something that you should always have autonomy over. That sex is something that should feel empowering, that should make you feel like yourself, that it's nothing you should ever be coerced or pressured into, is something that you should never feel ashamed of. It is something that should feel pleasurable. As a health minister, can you imagine, and there's members laughing, can you imagine that? As health minister, I can't talk about whether or not sex is pleasurable. Do you know how much sex that people have in this country, right? And they're laughing again, and this is so juvenile. In this country, okay, or in any country, guess what? People have sex. You know how often that results in a baby? Less than 0.1% of the time. Most of the sex you're going to have in your life is for pleasure. And why is it important to be able to say that sex is pleasurable? Because when you think that your body is there to serve somebody else, rather than to serve yourself and to serve your pleasure, then you're going to be more likely to accept abuse, you're going to be more likely to accept manipulation, and more likely to be hurt. And I'll tell you, this lesson came home to me very hard in my life when I was young, when in my life I was faced with deep sexual violence that happened when I was a kid. And my family didn't talk about sex. And the result of that was me being afraid of my sexuality and of sex, and linking sexual violence to somehow being part of sex, not understanding what sex was, and being deeply confused, and something that caused me an enormous amount of damage. And we know that sexual identity issues are a leading cause for teen suicide, that so many young people struggle with, what do I do? Do I please this person, or do I please myself, and is it okay to please myself, or what do I want? It's okay to be yourself, and we need to be able to say that in this country. It's okay to have autonomy over your body. And so again, I ask the question, if you're against contraception and you're against choice in terms of abortion, then how come you can't talk about female sexuality? Is it because you don't want women to have any choice at all, right? It's an important question. And so contraception and making sure that women have access to the contraceptive medicine that they need is absolutely essential as a matter of women having autonomy and control over their own bodies. And frankly, about making sure that they aren't used or manipulated or have a negative experience with that.